When I met the governor of the state of Lagos, it was 2 p.m. South African time, where he confirmed that of the 70 bodies where DNA samples had been conducted, 54 have been positively identified as being our compatriots whom we are obliged to repatriate back to South Africa. As I've said, that is work in progress. They've committed themselves, the governor, as well as the chief pathologists of the state of Lagos, working with a South African company in Stellenbosch to make sure that by the time we leave on Saturday, 85 of those bodies will be repatriated. So as we speak now, the 54 is work in progress. I'm sure by the time we leave, the number would have gone up.
In terms of the logistics, can you kindly take us through the process, or what will it entail to repatriate the bodies?
When we arrive on Sunday, the bodies, the mortal remains of our compatriots will be handed over, and the president will be able to receive us on Sunday so that he can hand over the bodies to the families of the deceased. There is going to be a religious ceremony which will be led by the chaplain of the South African Police Service and members of the deceased families, in order to ensure that we can bring closure to this very traumatic experience.
When you arrive back home with the bodies, can you tell us the program back home on Sunday? What's going to happen?
Well, I can confirm to South Africans that the South African government, led by our president, has all its ducks on the roll. When we get a green light, we'll be able to ensure that 1 a.m. South African time on Saturday, 2 aircrafts will land here in Lagos, in order to ensure that by 5 a.m. the preparations of taking bodies into the aircraft will commence. At 11 a.m. we'll be able to make a press conference to indicate precisely how many bodies will be repatriating back to South Africa.
There are speculations or reports that the relations between South Africa and Nigeria are strained because of this incident. How far true are the reports?
Well, that's a perception. The relations between South Africa and Nigeria are excellent. In fact, we have a strategic partnership between South Africa and Nigeria. During the fight against the system of apartheid, Nigeria was one of those countries that has always been at the forefront of the struggle to dismantle the system of apartheid. Now, on the African agenda, Nigeria being the biggest economy in Africa and South Africa being the biggest in this tip of the African continent, we are working very closely on the economic front, on infrastructure. In terms of economic relations, are at the best. There are more than 100 South African companies that are doing business here in Nigeria. There are many Nigerian companies in South Africa. For an example, the Dangote Cement is the single biggest foreign investor in South Africa today, where they're building a cement factory in Lichtenburg in South Africa, in the northwest part of our country. So those relationships are moving from strength to strength. The issue is just a tragedy here because the state of Lagos has to go through their own administrative procedures to make sure that when they hand over the bodies, it is to the right family. We also on video how that building collapsed, take into account the climatic conditions in Lagos. So we had to go through these scientific processes, the issues of fingerprinting, dental records, including DNA. So it takes some time. But we're confident that come Saturday, we'll be able to ensure that we bring our compatriots back to South Africa.
And finally, Minister, it has been a difficult time for the country, but particularly for the families. Your message to the nation and also to the families.
We empathize with the families of the deceased. As you know, in terms of our South African custom and tradition, we normally bury the deceased within 1 week. Now it is 2 months and 2 days since the tragedy took place on the 12th of September 2014. So we really appeal to our people, especially the families, just to bear with us. That is now the last mile. As they say, it is the darkest hour before dawn. So the Department of Social Development is in constant contact with all the families of the deceased in order to ensure that we can bring this closure as soon as possible.
Now for an update, we now cross live to Nigeria, Well, Foreign Editor Sophie Mokoena is following the story. A very good morning to you, Sophie. And can you update us on the latest developments there in Nigeria?
Good morning, Elvis. We are expecting today to get information in terms of the numbers. You remember on Wednesday, there was an indication that 54 bodies have been positively identified. But the minister yesterday announced that they are expecting the number to increase because work continues and it's a race against time for pathologists. Both the team working at Stellenbosch, back home in South Africa, and the team here at Op Center and the pathologists here in Lagos to ensure that they finalize the rest. But it's not clear yet how many numbers have been added to the 54 that we have. And secondly, the other issue is preparation for repatriation. As the minister has indicated that the Defence Force, the health services, the Department of Social Services personnel, the Transport Department, they are all on standby back home. The two Defence Force aircraft are on standby to fly to Lagos on Saturday so that repatriation can start. Here in Lagos at the center where South Africa has got offices, they are working very hard to ensure that the operations will be smooth on Saturday.
So Saturday is the deadline?
Yes, Saturday is the deadline, and the minister is still confident that they will meet the deadline, and he's also hopeful that come Saturday they will be able to repatriate 84 bodies. But we'll see what happens today. Yesterday, in Stellenbosch, in Lagos, the team continued to work, and today they will continue. Tomorrow in the morning, it will be some final touches, and they are hoping that come Saturday afternoon, the operation will start. And it's a massive operation.
Sophie, what is the word from members of the All-Nation Church in Nigeria regarding the South African bodies that are still there?
To our disappointment, the South African delegation and us, SABC crew, we went to the site at the church, and unfortunately we were received by very few members of the church. We don't even know whether they are senior members, but coming to the prophet himself, T.B. Joshua, he was nowhere to be seen. And I posed the question to the minister whether he will be able to meet the prophet himself to get details and his views. But he was not available, and the minister said, I'm happy. I spoke to the President of Nigeria, Mr. Goodluck Jonathan. I've spoken to the Governor of Lagos, Mr. Fashola. I'm happy. I'm going back, and what I want now is to ensure that the operation is smooth. You could see that he was very diplomatic. He didn't want to say, I don't know what to say, but this man is not really coming forward. But he was very diplomatic. And we posed a question whether he is willing to use an opportunity to explain his side of the story. It's a PR nightmare for the church, but us as SABC being there, we also thought we'd be given an opportunity to have an interview with the prophet himself, just to convey his message to the South African public, to the families. But to date, we're still waiting. Let's hope before we go back home on Sunday, we will be able to speak to the prophet, but I can't guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Has life gone back to normal for the families of the Nigerians that were affected by the collapse in Lagos, Nigeria?
I didn't hear that question.
Sophie, just wanted to check with you, has life gone back to normal for the Nigerians that were affected by the collapse?
We haven't spoken to the members of the family from Nigeria's side. But in terms of the public at large, it's normal. Life goes on. And, it's not even a big story here. It's just one of those stories, not in front page. It's one of those stories.
Sophie, thank you so much for that update. That was Sophie Mokoena, our foreign editor, live from Nigeria.